I'm Menachem Lubinsky, and I am the co-chairman of the International Committee for the Preservation of Har HaZeitim. This organization was founded basically because for hundreds of years, this 3,000-year-old cemetery was neglected, abused, desecrated, and in May of 2010, the state controller Michael Lindenstrauss issued a 64-page report in which he described the abuse, the neglect. He portrayed a picture of a place that was drug-infested. It was the drug capital of East Jerusalem. He showed desecrated graves. He showed donkey races. He showed Palestinians trampling on graves, and that's just a part of it. Basically, this is the national cemetery of the Jewish people. It represents our history going back 3,000 years from the time of David HaMelech. It includes the Nevi'im who are buried there. It includes almost every generation, the luminaries and the notables of our people, all the way to the former Prime Minister Menachem Begin. And you had to ask yourself, how could this be? How could this national cemetery of the Jewish people, would any other people have endured and accepted this type of condition? And Michael Lindenstrauss pointed out that all the governments prior to 2010 had neglected this treasure of the Jewish people. It wasn't until my brother Avram and I decided to convene a group of people of all walks of life, all shades, all backgrounds, that this committee came into being. And I and my very good friend and a very prominent member of this committee, Malcolm Hoenlein, who is the executive vice chairman of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations, met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and described the situation to him. And we found later on that there was money allocated for the security of Har HaZeitim. We began meeting with all officials, state officials, municipal officials, and we began the process of securing Har HaZeitim. In about 2 years, 137 surveillance cameras were installed. A monitoring room, underground monitoring room, was established. A police substation was created. So for the first time in hundreds of years, there was some sort of security on Har HaZeitim. So why does the problem persist? Because remember, Har HaZeitim is in the middle, in the heart of East Jerusalem. It is surrounded by Arab communities all around, communities that everyone knows. It's in the news all the time. Silwan, Abu Dis. And these communities are basically, in a way, they're lawless. Remember that from 1967 until today, they built 50,000 illegal homes. If an Arab wants to drive in that part of Jerusalem without a driver's license, he can. There's no law. If somebody wants to expand his home without a permit, he can. There's no law. So we're faced with, when we're dealing with the security of Har HaZeitim, we're dealing with the overall policy of the government towards that part of Yerushalayim. We know that one thing is for sure, that Har HaZeitim prevents the Arabs from creating a contiguous, illegal city that would go from Ramallah all the way to the doors of West Jerusalem. That 2.2 kilometer mountain, whose history includes the place where the ashes of the Parah Duma were, the place where David HaMelech ran away, the place where the Kohanim went to prepare before they went across the street to the Bet HaMikdash. The history there is so rich. If we don't preserve this 2.2 kilometers, we're essentially conceding the heart and the history of Yerushalayim. You'll ask why it is that today there are still rocks being thrown at people who go up to be mitpalel there. There are still graves that are being desecrated, as just happened on Purim. A number of graves were desecrated when the police are supposedly there, when the cameras are already established. And our main goal is really to talk about the periphery. What good is securing Har HaZeitim if you can't get there? If the access roads, people are going to get stoned as they have. And when we talk about stones, people have to understand this is not a problem just in East Jerusalem. It's a problem in many parts of the West Bank and even sometimes in Jerusalem proper. We're talking about not little pebbles. We're talking about stones that kill. And one of the things that we are determined to do is to change the law in Israel so that there should not be a revolving door justice for people who throw rocks. People who throw rocks is, in my opinion, and an opinion of anyone who is a logical, fair-minded thinking person, they're as good as a bullet, because a bullet kills and a rock can kill. And we just had the tragic death of Adele Biton, a 4-year-old girl who 2 years ago came under attack from the rocks. And this was a clear example of potentially how this can kill. And the government must address this issue. They must once and for all send the message that rock throwing will not be tolerated. Not in a cemetery, not on the way to the cemetery, not on a street of Jerusalem, nowhere. So this is going to be a very, very big priority of ours. Another big priority of ours is going to be to actually build a wall around Har HaZeitim. Remember, it's the national cemetery of the Jewish people. I've been to cemeteries all over the world. All these cemeteries are gated with top-notch security, are walled. Har HaZeitim is not. It is in some sections with a low wall. The time has come to secure Har HaZeitim, our national treasure, where 150,000 Jews are buried. There is no other sacred place that I can think of that has a 3,000-year walking history than Har HaZeitim. So that is another one of our priorities. A third priority of ours will be to bring tourists, Jewish tourists, to Har HaZeitim. We cannot afford to have the people thinking of Har HaZeitim as we used to think here of Harlem. It's a bad place to go. It's dangerous. We need thousands of Jewish tourists. We need kids to learn the history of the Jewish people. We need people to come there and to give it a vitality that it deserves. We need to bring Har HaZeitim literally to life. And that will happen. We're in the process of establishing a visitor center there that will be a museum that will bring some of the periods in Jewish history to life. We're talking about a new transportation hub that will extend the light rail to Har HaZeitim. We have a plan in the works to create a cable car that will go from West Jerusalem, make one stop at the Kotel, and go to Har HaZeitim once and for all. The Arabs call that neighborhood Ras Al Amud. They don't even concede that there's a cemetery there. In fact, there are something like 31 families living in Har HaZeitim. It tells you something about the people who live in a cemetery. I don't know anyone of my friends or anyone else that would want to live in a cemetery. It is not Ras Al Amud. It is not an extension of the neighborhood that's right nearby and the square and the neighborhood where the perpetrators run into. It is Har HaZeitim. It is Yerushalayim. And I can't be upset with the politicians who have the rhetoric, Jerusalem will never be divided again. But it is in fact divided. It is divided by the fact that there's no law in part of the capital of Israel. How can you control an area that you don't have jurisdiction over? How can you control an area that people are afraid to go to? So it will not be divided, but you can't get there? So that's not any jurisdiction. So our aim will be to firmly establish the Jewish flag on Har HaZeitim without any question. We know now that they're right across the street. There is a new community that was developed a couple of years ago by people like Aryeh King, Malei HaZeitim, people who have come to live there, to live in a place where Jews belong, in Yerushalayim. There's no better place for people to belong. They need to feel secure. They are the guardians who protect. They're looking across Har HaZeitim. I've been there. I looked down from the porches. I can see Har HaZeitim. So the mission of ours is to firmly establish the Jewishness and to develop it and to create the kind of atmosphere that people will feel that this is as secure as going to the Kotel HaMaravi. People often ask me, where are the Israelis in this? Why do people that live 6,000 miles away have to deal with something that should be a priority for Israelis? I have to say that we have found a very broad consensus from right to left in terms of Har HaZeitim. We've worked very closely with the mayor, Nir Barkat, on some of these plans, and he's very much committed to the development of it. But I began to realize something that many people have realized a long time ago. In Israel, everything is a process. I believe that we're in the middle of a process that eventually will lead to the results that we're looking for, and Yerushalayim will not be divided, and Yerushalayim will be Jewish, and more Jews will live there, and thousands of Jews will come to Har HaZeitim as tourists.